Yo, 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 welcome back to the Further Your Lifestyle podcast, conversations on lifestyle, passions, and hustles. My name's Chris, I am your host, and I'm super excited to be back here having the conversation with you. Episode 129 today, and we're actually talking about a topic which has kind of come from me having a conversation with a friend. So I recently caught up with John the reseller, and we always catch up and we always have deep and meaningful conversations. I really appreciate the conversations, John. And there was probably three big questions that came out of this conversation that I kind of wanted to turn into this episode, which was around the context of wants, pursuits, and success, and also, I guess, chasing something. The three big questions are, when is enough enough? What is your number in terms of what is the number of dollars you want to be earning? And what would you do if you were to hit your want or your goal or your idea of success today, and it was something that you had planned to hit, within 2, 3, 4, 5 years? What if you hit it today? What would change? And this is the conversation that I kind of wanted to have today, because I feel like there's so many different perspectives of this. There's so many different ways that we can look at it, and it also challenges our way of thinking and actually why we're doing things. And especially in the realms of building a business or building a lifestyle or creating something that we're proud of, or being a content creator, and all those different elements, or maybe just, in our pursuit of happiness for life. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Let's dive in. So, as I said, the three big questions in the context of wants, pursuits, and success and chasing something is, when is enough enough? Like, when do we call it? And that is usually in the context of success. There's always going to be something more. So when do we call it as this is enough? What is your number in terms of what dollar do you want? Like, if you could pick a number of how much you want to be earning, what is that number? And also, what would you do if you hit your level of success that you want in the future today? What would change? And I've broken this down into, I guess, probably 5 or 6 different areas that I kind of wanted to look at it from a different perspective. And this goes through, obviously I'll introduce the topic and we'll talk about it a little bit, but we'll dive a little deeper into it with some questions, and then probably give some personal insights, maybe look at it from a practical implication side of things, but also what does the future look like when we think about these conversations? And also, we'll conclude with my finishing thoughts. But I've done this in a way which I've written it and pulled together the information in a way which kind of then prompts me to be asked a question, and then I can have the conversation with you. And so an example of this would be, like, I'm going to get asked something about, can you recall a moment in your life when you grappled with these questions? And I'll go through it and I'll explain it. So that's really the style that I'll be doing to answer this, just to give you the context. So you think, hang on, why am I getting asked questions? I hope that helps you have a bit more clarification of how we're going to proceed into this episode. So let's dive into the introduction, right? So how did this even come to life? Like, how did we even get here in the first place? Well, I caught up with John the other day. We were having some, we actually caught up at a bakery and we're having some pies. Thanks, John, for the pies. And the three big questions kind of were coming up because we were talking about, YouTube. We were talking about my pursuit in my business and, what do I want for the future and how do I grow? And John's really good at bringing out perspective, and I think it's really important, just on a side note, to have people that encourage you, inspire you, challenge you, give you feedback, and don't just tell you things that you want to hear, but tell you things that you need to hear, right? And it's all out of love. And I guess that's where it kind of came from, because we were talking about, growing the YouTube channel or building a lifestyle or creating a business and things like that. And the questions that I wanted to challenge him with, in order for him to challenge me back, was, at what point is enough, right? Because we have all these ambitions at a certain point in time. And if I recall back, even going back to having this conversation with John, is, going into this whole, taking a chance on me to build this business, to create this podcast, there was this whole, expectation of what I wanted it to look like. And you get to that level, and then it's like, there's always something more. So we were going through the conversation of, right, well, when do we call it? And the other thing that I was thinking about was we both operate businesses. We both have an income coming in from YouTube and things like that. So it's like, well, what is the number that you want to be earning right now? Like, if you could earn a certain amount of money, how much would it be? And that would technically be enough. And, it's going to be different for everyone, because we all have different aspirations. We all have different needs and wants and families, responsibilities, accountabilities, etc. And I said to him, to me, it would be like $250,000. But it's one of those things where, like, if I was to ask you right now, like, how much money do you want to be earning? Like, what's your cap? Like, what is the number that's going to make you happy? Most people would probably, by default, say, $1 million, right? But why do you need $1 million? Like, if I was earning $250,000, this is profit. This is not revenue. In my pocket every year. What does that enable me to do? Well, it enables me to be able to go push out into the other areas of life that I want to be able to push into, whether it's having settling down with Carla and having a farm, or having some land and be able to try on some different projects and not actually sole rely on certain types of income coming through. It also means I could potentially work less if I have other streams of income coming through at that amount. Now, of course, it's easy for me to say this now because I do not know how that money is coming in. I have to create the opportunity for that money to come in the first place. But I think the other thing we need to consider is like, there's time and effort that requires for that to come in, but also, are you creating something that means that money will come in and you don't have to do as much work? And that kind of then led to the other thing is like, well, if all of a sudden overnight success occurred, like you got everything you wanted, you got, whether it was, a certain level of community, or you were getting a number coming through in terms of income, or maybe you hit a certain level of status, or whatever it may be, what changes? Is it enough? Is that enough? Like, is things going to change, or are you going to now pick for something else? And I think that was a very convicting conversation, because when we think about it, and it probably comes to the next point that I want to dive into, is like, why are these questions actually relevant in the context of today's society and individual pursuits? And it's because I think there's this unstated, and I've kind of mentioned this before, there's this unstated conversation that occurs between yourself and what you want. And you see this idea of what you want based on what other people are, suggesting, whether it's through social media, through friends, family, and, influencers, or even celebrities, or just people, and what they advocate as, this is what a rich person looks like, or this is, if you want to be able to do this, this is what you need to be doing. And it becomes as just hearsay or thrown out there, like, this is the expectation. Now, I think we need to question this, because it's like, well, what do you want, right? Now, there's a lot of people listening to this, and you all live a very different life to myself. I live a very different life to you. No one is living the right or wrong way. We're all living how we have to live at the moment, based on our circumstances, or we're living from the way we choose to live because we're happy with that. And it might be both. You might be happy with the way you're having to live because of the circumstances. And I think sometimes we need to not get so caught up in like what everyone else is suggesting, and I'm talking to myself, because when we start to project this idea of what we want based on what someone else is doing, thinking that's what we want, we're not actually going after what we want. You need to have the hard conversation with yourself or with your loved ones and figure out what it is that you actually want. What does that look like, and what does that require? And Tim Ferriss has spoken about this before. There's been a few other people of like, what is the number that you need in order to settle down to do what you want? And be happy with that. Achieve that, and then go live life, right? But I also understand that it's not as easy as just make that happen. You have to go do the work. But I think that's why it's relevant to today's conversations around, the pressures from society, or, everybody's individual pursuit for happiness. Now, the next point that I want to bring onto this is, what are the general perceptions surrounding the notions of enough, number, and ultimate success? This is very interesting because it's never going to be enough, right? If you go back, and I spoke about this a couple of weeks back, if you go back to when you were 15 and, you had a goal of what you wanted to be, or had a dream of who you wanted to be when you finished high school, and then you finish high school and those goals and dreams have changed. You're now pursuing something else potentially. And then you thought you wanted to be able to do this in your career, or you wanted to be able to do that, or you wanted to get married, or you wanted to own a house, or whatever it may be. And then you get to those points, and then it changes again. Now I want this. Now I want to be able to. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't always have something next that you're working towards, but there needs to come a point in time where you call it. Otherwise, we're just going to continuously keep doing for the sake of doing to want more. And when do we hit the ceiling? And I don't have the answer to this, because I don't. I really don't, because I don't know what I'll be wanting in 5 years' time from now. There's an idea of what I want in 5 years' time, and I have to work towards that. But if I got that today, right, an ultimate success today, well, then what changes, right? What do I need to work towards? Do I need to keep working? And I think that would be a bit of a shock. Think about someone that wins the lottery. Someone wins $10 million today. They've never had over $50,000 a year coming into their bank. That's a big impact. Like, that's a big change. And all of a sudden, it changes the way that you can do things. It opens up opportunity, but it can be very overwhelming as well. Because how would you handle it? What do you now work towards? What's your purpose? You don't have the motivation to work towards something because you don't need to work towards that anymore, because you've already got potentially the outcome that you think is now going to be the solution to all your problems. So enough, a number, ultimate success. I think it's all very interesting, but there needs to be a level of understanding of what it is that you want to keep yourself rooted and to keep yourself framed of honesty. All right. Because if I say, this is how much I want, I start earning that. Am I going to be tempted to want more? I don't have the answer. Probably will be, because we tend to have this drive for more, for wanting more because of what we see in the world. And I think it's something that we really need to consider of in the present moment of what we're doing right now. Can we actually slow ourselves down, pull it back a little bit, and not overwhelm ourselves with all these big aspirations and goals? Getting very deep here. We want to further our lifestyle, but what does that actually mean? And when we play it against enough, the number that we have in mind, and this ultimate success. All right, so we're going to dive into a little bit deeper into these now, right? And again, I've written this in a way that's going to ask me a question so I can have the conversation with you. How have societal or cultural norms influenced our understanding of when is enough enough? I don't think it's there. I don't think the conversation is happening very often. And I think when we think about people calling it enough, it doesn't happen. We see through our social, we see through our school, we see through our peers, we see through our family of what everyone has as an expectation. It's their expectation of their ideology of what they want or how the world works for them. And they'll, if you went and asked someone, it's like, if you went and asked someone today, it's like, what is success to you? Everyone's going to give you a different answer. It might be happiness, it might be money, it might be freedom, it might be time, it might be the ability to do whatever you want, whenever you want. And at the same time, if you went to ask people when it is enough, I think people would then bring it down to a money, or that they don't have to work anymore, or that they have all the time in the world. And that's what it really kind of, I am generalizing, but that's what it kind of bubbles down into. And that comes from because everyone wants everything. And when I say everything, is like enough to be able to do anything that they want when they want it now. The reality is that it doesn't happen that way. But when we ask ourselves the questions of like, if you could have all that today, how would that change the way you operate, the way you think about, the way you do, and the way that you present yourself going forward? Because a lot of our things that we're motivated towards is to create this lifestyle we want. But if you have that now, how does that change where you go beyond that? So I think the big question we need to ask ourselves is like, what is our purpose? What is our thing beyond those material things that come with hitting that level of where we want to be? And unfortunately, I think society doesn't train us for that. I don't think we're prepared for that. The next question is, what does "what is your number" mean in the context of personal aspirations, desires, and thresholds? Whew. So for me, like, I'll be pretty honest here, like, my number is, when I was asked this question way back, probably about a year ago, is $250,000. The reason why is because, like, at first it was like, am I limiting myself? And when I started to think about it, it's like, well, the only things that I've always wanted to be, I want to say I'm a millionaire, right? But what does a millionaire mean? Is that an asset? Is it in liquid? Whatever. But the reason why I've pulled back to $250,000 is because that was above what I was currently, way above what I was previously earning, at my last 9 to 5. And I also looked at it from the perspective is like, well, $250,000 is, it's a lot of money. I can't fathom that coming in because I've never had that much coming in a single year. But when you think about it, it's about $20,000, $20,000 to $21,000 a month coming into your pocket. And that gives you the opportunity to do things. It gives you the opportunity to invest. It gives you the opportunity to help others. It gives you the opportunity to, work on side projects and hobbies. But it also gives you the opportunity to potentially not have to work the normal 9 to 5. But that's the catch. And I think that's where I have lost out on, because if I was earning $250,000, and I kind of mentioned this already, there has to be a mechanism for that to convert. Meaning, where's that coming from? Just because I'm earning $250,000 doesn't mean that I'm not working. So I think the bigger question that we need to understand is, in terms of personal aspirations, desires, and thresholds, I would like to be earning that money with doing as little as much work as possible, because I want to be able to work on some ideas, some projects, some hobbies, things that might not necessarily generate an income, things that might not generate a profit, things that I can explore, invest in, and potentially make an impact with to a broader audience or to other people. For instance, I do a lot of fundraising work, and at the moment we're raising $10,000. I would love to think we can do, 10x that in the future, like to be able to make a bigger impact. And obviously, to help do that, there needs to be a level of funding that comes with that to help generate the leverage of compounding, of bringing in that money. So I think we also need to then understand, it's like, well, when I have that money, this is all assuming that I get that money, is like, is it going to be enough? And what does that look like? I don't have the answer to that. I'm being very open about it. And, there is that perception level of like, well, is that too much? Is that greedy? Is it not enough? Should I be looking for more? I have no idea. That's what I have in mind at this point in time, because I think it would work, but that could change. The next question is, how do different individuals interpret the question, what would you do if you hit your want of the level of success you currently imagine today? Well, I can't answer for you, but it is a question for you. Think about this right now. If your number was $250,000, or you wanted to have 10,000 subscribers on YouTube and you just started today, or you wanted to have a podcast that is in the top charts of, global podcasts, or you wanted to be able to, run a sub 3-hour marathon. Look, I'm using my own examples as examples because I don't know what your goals are, right? But if you hit that all today, like you woke up and all of a sudden you've done your first video on YouTube and you've gone viral and you've hit that number of subscribers. Now what? Right? What was the purpose of the 10,000 subscribers? What does that mean for you? Does it mean, that 10,000 will generate me money? Well, that's not the goal. The goal is to have 10,000 people following you. Or is it really you actually want to be able to have enough people following me so that you would generate income? I don't know. If I hit the top charts in podcasting at the moment, what does that mean for me? Well, one, it'll be pretty cool. People say, you got one of the top podcasts in the world. There'll be a bit of excitement, a bit of thrill. But what does that mean? It brings a higher level of responsibility and accountability with it too. There'll be a different expectation level. And there would be then maybe a sense of like, okay, how can I now take this bigger? How can I now have an impact to other people? How can I connect and work with other partners? That's probably what I would think straight away. And then, if I went out and at the moment I'm doing a 50K, training for a 50K, I go do my 50K in a couple of weeks' time and I go through it and breeze through it and there's no problem. It's like, okay, it's all done and dusted. That's what I want to happen, of course. So it's like, okay, now we work on the next thing. So I think there's levels of it where you get it and it's not going to make a huge difference to your life. Life will just go on. But there's going to be things that will actually change your life for greater. Like all of a sudden, if you won the lottery, obviously that's going to make a big change to your life, potentially. But if I go finish a marathon or run a 50K and it's really good, I'm going to have a level of confidence, I'm going to feel good about myself, and I'm going to go want to do something again or do more, right? So there's always going to be that level of more, or that level of you've made it, or that level of like, now what? Because you lose the sense of purpose. You lose that motivation because that was your why. And I think you need to challenge yourself in anything that you're doing right now. Building a career, building a business, working on a project, creating content, whatever it is. Ask yourself this. Is it like, if this all happens overnight, if this all goes to plan quicker than I expected, what then? Right? And it's not to be able for you to figure out, crap, I don't know what to do after that. That's not what I'm trying to, allude to. What I'm trying to allude to is what you're doing right now the most important thing you should be doing? Because you have this idea of what it's going to get you to. But if that's not going to actually get you to where you want to be, or the outcome that you start to play out isn't actually that enticing, maybe consider thinking about what is the actual outcome you want. All right, personal insight. So how did and look, I'm not going to answer this in very detail because I don't think it's fair to share someone else's perspective. But the question that's being generated back to myself is, how did John's perspective on these questions impact or differ from your own? We had different ideas, and I think it's really good to have these conversations. I'm not going to share his. It's not my place to share. But my encouragement is, have this conversation with someone close to you, a loved one, a friend, someone that you can, confide in, and with confidence and things like that, because you'll find that you'll have different ideas, different perspectives. None of them are right or wrong. They're all going to be right or wrong for yourself for whatever reason. But I think it's important to have the healthy conversation, because it's going to create new perspective, fresh perspective. The next question is, can you recall a moment in your life when you grappled with these questions, and what were the insights you derived? Well, as I kind of alluded to, I did this conversation around what's my number about a year ago, and I struggled with it because I felt like it was then going to define everything that I'm working towards. But I actually looked at it from a different perspective, is in my pursuit of business, which I'm doing business to make money. Let's be honest, I'm doing business to make money, and I want to earn money and have the money to be able to do certain things. And whether it's for, 1 year down the line or 10 years down the line, or, future ideas with, being able to settle down and things like that. Again, they're all ideas. Things change very rapidly. But one thing that I looked at, I was struggling to actually come up with a number, because I felt like, is that too much? Is that too dirty? Or what would people think? If I thought, well, who cares what people think? You can have whatever number you want. I mean, you got to go find it. You got to go get it. But the reality was with this was, one of the things that I said was I want to be able to earn enough money, right, to be able to go buy something without any questions asked. And that one thing might have been like a Pokemon card or something, because for me, it was just something that I've always wanted to pursue. And for me, the way I operate with my money is, I don't buy things just for the sake of buying it. I thought it out, I think about it, I usually wait on it for 30 days, doesn't make sense, la-di-da-di-da, right? So I would know if I was spending money on something which is a huge amount of money for a card, a trading card, it's a bit ridiculous, but it would mean that it's not an impact for me and I've deserved it. And it's like for me at the moment, when I hit a certain milestone in my business, $100,000, I'll buy something for myself as a plaque, as a reminder, as well done, Chris, you've done this, and as a reward. And I did it at the 200,000. I actually haven't purchased that yet, but the point is, it's like I've deserved it. I've been rewarding of it. And it would then tell me that because I've hit that level, that means that it's okay to spend that because it's justifiable. But at the same time, it's not going to make a huge impact to my income. It's not going to make a huge impact to, the money coming in. Now, this might sound diluted or delusional, but the fact of the matter is, we need to grapple these conversations, because the other conversation that came up was how much would I, if someone was to ask me to come back work full time, what would my number be? Would it be the $250,000? And I said no, because I don't want to go back to that lifestyle. What I want now is my lifestyle now, which is very free, very relaxed, and I'm happy with it. Obviously, there's a lot of things that I can't do yet because I'm constrained with finances. But if I was able to live the life that I'm living with the extra flexibility of finances, I think I would be able to be in a position where I'm 100% living my dream. And that's why I don't want to go back to work for someone else, because it pulls away the ability to be able to live the things that I want to live. It's a trade-off, right? So when you work the 9 to 5, you work for someone else, and you might not have certain ability to have the freedom of time to spend it with loved ones or do the things you want to do. It's a trade-off, but you get more money. Whereas working for yourself, you're not necessarily always getting the money that you expect, but you have more time. And it's a fine balance. It's a fine balance. It's a trade-off. It means I don't have the opportunity to do certain things. I can't invest in certain ways. I can't go buy something if I wanted to. I've got emergency funds, I've got all those things, but there are limiting pros and cons from both sides. These are all things we have to take into account. Personal insights here, being very, very open. And I think, the next question was actually going to be, do you have any anecdotes or stories that I can shed light on this question? I kind of just shared that already, right? And I think it's very important that we ask people these questions, because it gives perspective. It helps us formulate maybe our own, if you're stuck in this yourself. Because there comes a level where you need to understand, what is your priority in life? What are the priorities in your life But at the same time, it's like, what are the ideas that you have versus what are the things you actually want? Because ideas aren't necessarily things you want, they just seem cool, right? But then it's like, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Reality versus expectations settle in, right? So that's that, right? Now, if we move on to the next area that I want to talk about, or that pops up in this area of context, is practical implications. So how can individuals navigate these questions in their day-to-day lives? Without getting into too much detail and complexity, there's a conversation that I've had before, which is about your North Star. And the short of it is, when you think about where you want to be going, your North Star, the thing that you're walking towards or heading towards, the question that I would always encourage people to say is like, am I doing so the thing that I'm doing today, is it going to get me closer to where I want to be in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years? Right? That's really the conversation you should be having. And when you bring in the wants, the enough is enough, your number, things like that, I think that helps bring it into an honest, humbled perspective. Because I know what I'm doing right now is working towards where I want to be. And that's the idea that it's going to take me maybe 5 years to get there. But that will all change very, very quickly if you get a jump, if you get a leap. And sometimes those things happen. Opportunities pop up and you're able to jump a few years, or you get ahead. But then the question will then become, is like, how does this change where I want or what I want to be? And you need to then ask yourself, again, if that means your North Star has been reached, what now? And it's okay not to know what that looks like, but have the conversation of understanding, is like, okay, what's the next thing we're moving towards? Now, I know I'm not trying to tell people you need to be living in the future and have everything planned out. No. But by giving yourself some things to work towards, ideas or, dream lives and things like that to work towards, it gives you purpose. It gives you a sense of motivation, and it gives you a sense of structure. And even better if you're doing it with someone else. And also knowing that there's going to come a time where you need to have this conversation again. You get to start again from the bottom. The bottom might be where you finally made it, but it means you now get to build something new again. And that's okay. What resources, philosophies, or practices can help individuals find clarity in their answers to these questions? Well, I just said, North Star. Like, finding your North Star, this is usually done in businesses, but going through a series of processes and understanding what are things that you can be doing now that are going to get you towards to where you want to be. And then if you do this analysis, you can actually find, well, there's things that we probably can't do until we've achieved something else, because we don't have access to that. So you have to park it, you have to shelve it. And there's a whole bunch of different resources on this. I'll put them in the show notes, and you can actually, have a look for yourself. It's particular around, building your North Star and working towards it. But I think that would be my big area that I would suggest and encourage you to go look at, which is finding your North Star. And look, there's probably plenty of other people. If you wanted to read a book that I would encourage you to read that is relevant to this, is The 4-Hour Workweek as well. I think that would help you get the perspective that I'm talking about. And look, there's lots of books as well. I'll put some other resources down there, but off the tip of my tongue, these are the ones that I'm suggesting. Are there industries or societal structures that particularly influence or are influenced by these questions? Yes and no. I think one big area is where this is very strongly spoken about is in lifestyle coaching, personal coaching, and helping you become a better version of yourself, self-improvement. And that's usually because the thing that is stopping us to getting to where we want to be is ourselves. Our issues, our imposter syndrome, our doubt, our lack of confidence, our fear, our ability to work through our crap. And when we're able to conquer ourselves, we're able to move over the big mountain and actually start to, work on making moves into where we want to be. So I think there is an industry of, self-help and, becoming a better version of yourself. That industry really, really does focus on these areas of conversation. And if that's where you wanted to learn more about this, that's where it would be, or the Further Your Lifestyle podcast. All right, the next area that I'll dive into is future outlook. So as societal norms and values evolve, ours as well, how might the answers to these questions change to future generations? Oh, that's a very deep question. I think it's important to understand that the access that we have to everything at this moment is it's never been like it before, right? It's better than a year ago. It's better than 5 years ago. And in the future, it's only going to get better. The ability to be able to access opportunity to be able to get us to where we want to be. And I think something that it's probably done better now because I don't know of it because I'm not going through that experience. But going through high school now, learning from other people, I think people are going to get breadcrumbs a lot quicker than it took for us to get the breadcrumbs as we grew up. Because there's information that I might discover now that people 10 years, 20 years younger than me are discovering, which means it gives them a 10-year, 20-year advantage on me. Now, it doesn't mean if it's going to take 10 years to 20 years to implement, we'll end up at the same spot at the same time if we're working on it at the same time. But the reality is they'll be 10 years or 20 years younger than me. So therefore, they've got more leverage or the ability to get ahead. Alex Hormozi talks about this quite a lot, when he compares himself to Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett's like in his 90s and he's, one of the richest guys in the world. And, he wasn't a billionaire until quite late into his, years. Whereas Alex Hormozi, he's like 30, 32, and he's already on a race that is going to supersede Warren Buffett because he's now able to maximize on the time gap that he has. And that's the power of knowledge and understanding and experience. When you have information at a younger age that enables you to execute with a better return, you're going to get better results in a shorter amount of time, but even better results over a longer period of time. So if you have that information now and you have this much time to expand on it, that compounding effect is going to be invaluable. That's where I think the future generations have a one-up on a generation compared to now. How might technological or economic shifts influence the way people perceive their wants, pursuits, and yeah, this one's already we're seeing. I mean, on the internet, everyone shares everything. Highlight reels. I do it as myself as well. I mean, I was talking about I'm wanting to buy a card because it's what I want. But we're influenced by what other people have, see, do, share, talk about, what is ranked as cool. I mean, we all have interests. There's nothing wrong with having interests and hobbies and passions, but understanding why do you want that? What does that do? Like, I'm not a big car guy. I haven't had an expensive car. But I know some people, they thrive off that. They want the expensive car to show that this is what I've got. Now, if you've got, $1 million car, but you're a billionaire, that makes sense. But if you're not a millionaire and you have $1 million car, it doesn't make sense because it doesn't actually fit your lifestyle. Now, I'm not saying that you have to have $1 million car if you have $1 million either. There's nothing wrong with having a $10,000 car and being a millionaire, right? But you've got to understand is like, what is that status presenting, right? Is it because you want to present something that isn't you, that you want to be, or is it just part of who you are? And I think that's important to understand. It's like why people wear jewelry or wear tattoos. It might be something that is of significance, sentiment to them, and it's got nothing about anyone else. Whereas sometimes we wear things to impress other people, and it's got nothing really about you. It's just wanting you to win the appreciation of someone else. So I think we need to be very careful of that. And I think we will continue to see that as I kind of just expressed, that things will grow and change and we'll have more access to more ideas, to more influence. Therefore, I think it will get even worse in terms of what people want. Just want. Other emerging trends or movements that address these questions in innovative ways? Not really. I think the best person that has these conversations that I've just been talking about is Gary Vee and Alex Hormozi and Tim Ferriss. And then on a smaller level would probably be Pat Flynn in helping you work through these things. They're not really trends or movements, but they're just communities of people that seem to have figured it out in a better perspective. So that would be my recommendations. There's the, that's where I'll leave it there. Now, I guess to conclude on all this, there's a couple of other things we'll just quickly mention is, so after diving deep into all this conversation, my question to you is, has your perspective or answer changed in any way? Now, for me, not really. I think it challenges me to think about how I think about these things, and it will continue to challenge me as I continue to have these conversations with Carla and as I continue to think about where I want to be and what I want. That will change. And being open and comfortable with the change. That's what I struggle with, but I think that's what it gives me perspective of. So I think for you is like, when we think about these questions, go back and have another listen. ask yourself those questions again. When is enough enough? What is your number financially? And what would you do if you hit your level of success today? And then go through the whole process again, talking about, the conversations that I've just had. Does this now change your perspective? Does anything differ to what you started with? The next thing is, how can you now further reflect upon this and seek your own answers? Well, I would encourage you, if you haven't really been paying attention and you've just been listening to me share, now go through this and reflect upon each area that I've just gone through and answer it for yourself. Don't listen to my answer, but go through, let me ask the question, and then answer it back for yourself. Take some notes. Write it down. Have the conversation with your partner, your loved ones, your family, your friends. If you want to make an impact to your life and change and further your lifestyle, you have to do something that will make an impact and change and further your lifestyle. It's that simple. And then the final thing I'll leave you with is, what are the next steps for you if you want to seek a deeper understanding or wish to align your actions with the answers to those, with your answers to these questions? I think there's no simple way to do it, but you need to have it kind of understood first, right? And then it's then living it, putting it into play. Now, if you do not know how to put things into play, I think the best way to do that is come back and have the conversation. It doesn't have to be with me, but I'm more than happy to have a conversation with anyone. If you're like, this is what you want, you're set on it, you're convicted by it, but you're not really sure where to step or where to go next, have the conversation with someone. Share your ideas, share your perspective, find someone that you can speak with in confidence. For me, it was like John, and there's plenty of other people that I catch up on a regular basis who are the best to have these conversations with, because they keep it real, they keep it honest, they challenge you, they give you really honest feedback. And I think you need that. If you don't have that, then you're just stuck in your head and you won't actually make the progress that you need to hear. So a big shout out, a big thank you to John the Reseller. We had some pretty good conversations. And look, I do this on a regular basis with other people. I have conversations with my accountant, Ethan Bouchok. I have conversations with Kevin Exconde, a good friend from Canada. And of course, I have these conversations with Carla as well. But the reality is there's multiple people that I have these conversations with, and you need to have them on a regular basis because it challenges you, it gets you motivated, it gets you excited, but it also brings you back to reality. And it keeps you honest and keeps you humbled and helps you know that you're doing what you want and focusing on your North Star. So that is this episode. Really do appreciate you being here. If you've got any questions, clarifications, comments, chuck them down below if you are here on YouTube. Otherwise, reach out, connect with me. More than happy to continue the conversation. I do have SpeakPipe, which is www.speakpipe.com/furtheryourlifestyle. Jump over there. You can leave a voice memo. We can continue the conversation that way. Otherwise, if you enjoyed this episode and it challenged you, share it with someone. Share it with someone. That would mean the absolute world to me. Appreciate you. You have a wonderful day. Cheers.